We welcome any questions you may have. Please use the GoToWebinar chat pane on the right side of your screen to submit questions at any time throughout the webinar. Questions will be addressed at the end, and we will be following up on those if we run out of time. Now, the webinar has been recorded, and you will receive a copy to the slide deck and recording after the webinar has been completed or over the next few days. Now for a brief introduction of our presenter today. Steve Miller has over 20 years practical experience with setting up, managing and developing contact centres and customer interaction channels. Steve established and ran the contact centres at Westpac, taking 18,000 calls per day to agents and 100,000 calls to the IVR self-service system. In 2002, he established absol, specialising in contact centre and service delivery channel business practices and business technology integration. Steve has led assignments with over 40 organisations across a range of industries wishing to expand and improve their service delivery by phone and other media types. absol engagements include customer interaction, channel strategy development and execution. So now I'll hand over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Chris. That's great, and welcome to everybody from Australia and across New Zealand. So yeah, it's good to have you guys here. So essentially, today's session's about how you can turn those pesky challenges and questions and targets people strap on your back all the time and come looking for you into opportunities and success for your contact centre. So let's kind of roll on through. So firstly, who are we? Well, a small group of customer experience professionals. Essentially, we've spent a lot of years helping people get things better in their contact centres, and that's from very small sites to 4 or 5 seats up to those which are multi-site and several hundred. So scale doesn't matter. All that happens when your contact centre gets smaller is you have more to do, particularly if you're the contact centre manager. So before setting up absol in 2002, all of us were in contact centre leadership roles. It's just kind of what we've lived and breathed for an awful long time now. We've done a lot of assignments with Enghouse clients across the time, and essentially all of us are passionate about driving sustainable customer experience performance. You'll find I'm using that CX term there quite regularly through the session today, but it's around good structure, the right sort of skills around the place, consistent practices and relevant metrics, and not too many of those. And you'll see our websites down below where you can go and have a look and see what we do, where we've been, and the kinds of things we get up to. All right, so about today's session, really it's around sharing learnings and real stories from over 40 engagements. You'll find that some of these slides may look fairly wordy. I'm not going to walk through the detail of every one. It's really so that you've got a resource kit to take away, and you can use these when you kind of come across something and go, I wonder if that guy said something about that in that session today. So those sort of challenges are around customer frustration. You don't deal with that, you're going to have major problems down the track. It's around getting the right number of people in the right place at the right time, and that's kind of the first step, but the critical thing here is actually getting that to happen all the time, hence the underline at the end. Technologies, well, there's a lot of them out there that get in the way of business, and this is not Enghouse. Enghouse, as far as we're concerned, is one of the easiest contact centre systems to use and get value from. Quality practices, KPIs, an awful lot of organisations, contact centres around the place have them, but they don't seem to work. And lastly, reporting spaghetti. It's probably being kind to spaghetti in actual fact, or unkind to spaghetti, should I say, because sometimes reporting can be a nightmare. Then later towards the end of the session, I'll be showing you a roadmap to a sustainable customer experience centre, because that's really where things are going. Down the bottom, you'll see there's a piece around really useful websites, and you'll find that as we go through, I'll be dropping a few website names in there for you to go and have a look at. So that's kind of a resource again to go forward. Right, so let's get into it. So I guess we start, as we always do, from an absol perspective, which is standing in the customer's shoes and going, so what do they want us to do? And from our perspective, there are 5 things that are after. Firstly is you'll be reachable. In other words, I can get to you and I won't be waiting too long or getting passed around, because that's just not okay. The second one is that I'll be recognised. So if we've got an ongoing dialogue, then I shouldn't be a stranger and have to start over every time I call you. The next is that you'll be responsive. So if I ask for something, then you'll take my request on board. And if you say you're going to do something, then you will do it, and it's in a reasonable time frame. Relevance is always important as well. Match your interaction to my situation. So if I've got a gnarly problem with your product or service and I'm wanting some help to get it sorted out, don't try and sell me something. This is not the place where you want to have fries with that. And really, consistency is the critical thing, both within the channel and across the channel. Shouldn't matter which team member I talk to or which channel I'm in, then the processes will be the same. I guess one of the things that we see is that customers are now assuming frictionless movement. I like to talk about grazing. It's a bit like cows. You know, they have a mouthful of this and a mouthful of that. They kind of move around the place. They try different food. And so what you'll find is that customers like to kind of start in a particular channel as per the right-hand side. They'll then press pause, jump to a different channel and carry on. And the key thing here really is that if you think about it, the call is probably already on your website when they make that call to you. So they already have a sense of what it is. So things need to be consistent as you go forward. So how do you take care of this from a contact center management perspective? Well, we like to use 5 key levers, and they're at your fingertips, and it's kind of useful because I can count to 5. I've even got a hand that'll help me along the way if I need to. The first of those is around customer experience design. So that's the end-to-end experience from somebody making contact through whatever channel it is, all the way through reaching fulfillment, getting the service, solving a problem, finding the information that they want to find. The second one we have here is workforce planning. This is around how many people do I need, what's the workload look like, when do I need them there, and how do I manage to make sure I'm serving my callers across the day, or my emails, or my whatever it might be. The third's around processes and technologies. So this is around the business processes, which are doing the business for the various products and services you have, and those enabling technologies that help you make the thing happen in a good way with your customers. The fourth is roles and readiness. So what's my role, whether I'm frontline team leader, or whether I'm a specialist, maybe I'm a specialist quality champion, or I'm a specialist workforce planner, or I'm a contact center manager. And if you're one of those in a smaller site, then you get to do all those specialist things yourself. And last but not least, quality and performance. So how do we measure customer experience quality? How do we make sure that the right things are happening? And how's our site going, and are we meeting the business needs? So you'll find we'll make reference to these, and we'll actually have a look at those now on a one-by-one basis. So let's start with customer experience design. First impressions count. So you see down below a bit of a diagram which kind of looks there around customer experience time and a few other things that we'll see. Critically, the thing around this is getting your callers to the right place fast. And that's the whole purpose of the front end, routing processes, whatever they might be, whatever system you have, and how many channels you're blending and all those good things. Key thing here is actually looking at that options order menu layers. Lordy, we see organizations with 3 layers, 4 layers of IVRs with 5 options in each, and you go, I run out of fingers. I just cannot cope. Or we've got the messages, and they're stale. They're like stale bread. You've always got to be refreshing messages that are in your message flows, and part of that is actually knowing what's there. So if you're working through this, you're starting a new service, anything like that, always think about the end-to-end experience. And if you're looking at skills-based routing, and most of you are probably using it now, just keep it really simple, because the more splits you have, then the smaller your resource pool and the harder it is to actually cope with those variations that turn up. So if you look at the customer frustration time down the bottom, it's a wee specialty of mine, which is around what is the time which is going to contribute to that. And it's the time from when a customer calls right through to the point where they're answered. That's the piece you've got to manage, and that's where good workforce management comes into place. So if we're looking at customer experience design, then it's all about trust but verify. So I'd ask every one of you, when did you last play customer? When did you last pick up the call your contact center, send an email, have a web chat, just to see what happens? And don't just do it in the quiet times. Jump in there when things are really busy, and you'll get a good sense of what's going on. How many of you have heard this? Thank you for waiting. We are currently experiencing high demand. Lord, there's several contact centres here in New Zealand that I go on to, and they've been playing this message for months, if not years. And what's more, they play it to me several times if I'm sitting waiting in the queue. It just drives me up the wall, as does the next one, which is poor quality hold music. If it's fuzzy, if it's nasty, if it's really annoying and it's the same stuff all over the time, especially the canned ones which are generated, then it's a real source of frustration. All right, so now I'm going to share with you a few cringe moments out of our 15 years of walking around and looking at contact centres. Too many wrap codes? No problem. I just use other when we're busy. So the key here is don't have too many wrap codes. Keep the numbers relatively small, keep it tight, and really the best thing to do is not have other, because people just click other, and then the information you're gathering about wrap codes and what the calls are about is not usually helpful. TV commercials. Call us now. You sit there watching TV at night. We've done this when I've been working with particular clients, and when we've seen their ad come on, and we know they're closed, and we know that the service has been switched to an after-hours provider. So their call to action is a total waste of marketing dollars. If they're going to run a short-term campaign, then staff up and run it in the evenings when their campaign's running, but don't send people off to a poor experience. Lastly, in here, we don't need after-call work time. Our agents do that during the next call. So what kind of customer experience is that? It's just the sort of thing which leads to mistakes being made and customers getting frustrated. Here you go down the bottom, you've got Contact Center Pipeline. That's an American website which is well worth a look at. Quick word around web chat. Emerging best practice. There's a lady by the name of Leslie O'Flahaven, and I probably haven't pronounced that correctly. She runs eWrite Online. She's an absolute guru on this web chat world. And these are her 5 steps to excellence. And I guess the key things from where I sit are avoid selling when you're still in problem-solving mode. So if someone's having a web chat, don't try and sell them things until you've got to the far end. And then it may be a judgment call, let's not sell them something today. On the other side, we've got 5 key enablers. And there's an interesting one in the middle there around how many chats at a time. Suggestion here is 3 to 4. Depends on where you are. We've done some work in some consulting engagements with people who are running what are semi-counselling environments. For them, it's 1 to 2. You just need to maintain focus on the client. The last one here, don't leave the last chat hanging. That was a fascinating assignment where we were working with a client, and one of the agents said to us, you know, one of the worst things is I get home at night, I have a shower, I hop into bed, and I suddenly think, oh no, I was having a chat with Sally Smith. I didn't finish that. And it wasn't just one person we heard say this, it's been several. So be careful at your protocols. Make sure that no one's left hanging when someone ends their shift. Moving on to workforce management. You see that little picture on the right-hand side? That's what you don't want. Because one of the biggest issues in terms of good workforce management is mixed messages and mixed signals all around the place. And this little lot would be a nightmare. This is a black art to some degree. There's some science, but there's lots of common sense. So the way we approach it is we have a rolling 180-day forecast. That's as each month rolls off, you add another one on. And you have enough coverage for staff shrinkage, things like leave and sick leave and training and coaching and all those other things which come around. We tend to run campaign and TV commercials approach as if it's events management and don't overbook your seats. And I guess a wee aside here, when I was with the Westpac contact centres in Sydney some years ago, we had a protocol there which worked really well, and that was we'd establish each month how much capacity we had to handle campaigns and TV commercials. We then get the guys from the marketing and sales department in a room, and they need to bid for the available seats. And we'd agree around the room as to who was going to have the seats for this month to be able to do this, take up this extra capacity, and that's how we ran it. So that's what you call the dog wagging the tail as opposed to the other way around. When it comes to workforce management, it's really good to have a reference library of events, these sorts of things, campaigns, commercials, end of year profit announcements, whatever else. Build a reference library, volumes and average handle times, because sometimes they can move around a bit as well. AHT can stretch when those things happen. And then have those in the library. When somebody says, I want to do one of those, you just simply pull it out and say, oh, that's my overlay of staffing required. Moving on to intraday queue management. So this is what we do across the day to make sure that the service levels are maintained interval by interval. It's really important to know where your people are. Are they in the right place at the right time? And hence, agent adherence reporting is critical. And yes, good old chestnut that we see way too often. We're short-staffed this week. Let's cancel team meetings one-on-ones. Those are actually the most important things and the last things that should be cancelled from my perspective. Here's an interesting snippet from a recent piece that I was reading, a suggestion that by 2020 over 90% of all contacts will start on the website. So the guys in the workforce planning department won't bother with the historical stuff. They'll have a look at the website traffic. That'll be the driver. Interesting thought, really. Okay, so detail. Workforce planning is all about the detail, and often there's just not enough time. But hey, why is daylight saving still such a big surprise? If you go back and look at your reporting across daylight saving change, I guarantee you will find there's been a stretch of demand across that period because people are still getting used to it, and it'll happen twice a year, so therefore that's just like a campaign. Regard daylight saving as a campaign just as you would Easter and all those good things. Second point here, always ensure you drop the bad day out of your workload forecast. Right, that's got to go because otherwise you'll get a distorted view of what your needs really are. And schedule everything that moves. If it moves, schedule it. So team meetings, coaching one-on-ones, all those things need to be in the schedule. Okay, a few cringes. We can't publish adherence for a week. It takes so long to load schedule exceptions. This particular client, we managed to persuade them to just ease off a bit on those schedule exception KPIs so that you can actually get the information out there and get on with life. Team leaders take agents off the phones for one-on-ones and coaching whenever it suits them. Well, actually, that's very poor teamwork if you think about it, and we'll come back onto that. And the third point here is about the issue of pooling principle. Absolutely critical thing about the size and scale of your teams. If you split if you split a team into two groups for better focus and productivity, you'll get the focus, but you won't get the productivity because given that calls arrive on a random basis, the volumes go up and down, and calls do bunch up, then as soon as you halve the group, you make it harder for yourself. So just a few kind of trends in the world of workforce planning in an omni-channel world. So agent roles, typically generalist plus specialist groups. So we're seeing a move now towards having level 1, level 2. Level 1 is often used in the term of triage, not a term I particularly like because it sounds like you're in the A&E department. But you have generalists who then fire calls off to specialist groups, transfer them. They never get as far as they can, and there are limits there, but then they pass to a specialist, which means you get the best possible combination of service. Blending skill and quality. So you can blend all these things together, but typically from a skill perspective, we're seeing that people are finding that people are good at the talking stuff or else they're good at the written stuff. They're not good at both, and what you might do with your blending is you've got a bunch of agents who are good at the spoken, so they'll be priority 1 for calls and maybe priority 2 for the written stuff, and vice versa. Rolling on to forecasting. So it's a matter of how you draw this stuff together. So calls, web chat, and social media, you treat them as if they're calls, and whereas the written stuff, emails, web queries, and the general posts and Facebook, those are like the emails. So that's kind of how you do that. Okay, let's move on to processes and technologies. So the key thing here is simple and clear from a process perspective and enabling technologies that actually do enable the customer experience. So this is everything. This is your CRM. This is all those good things that work together, the emails being served into the world, things coming off the company website and so on. So back to alignment, as I mentioned first, that you need those processes to be neat, tidy, and consistent. If you've got ID processes required, then it needs to be enough but not over the top, so you drive your customers away. And really, your agents need to have very easy access to process how to help, particularly for the things they don't do that often. They don't have limitless brains to be able to keep all that stuff in. And fixed after-call work time, gosh, so many places we find this has been locked down. And really, from our perspective, that says you don't trust your people to do the right thing. The reality is that no two calls are the same, and after-call work needs to be elastic. It needs to move and be able to move. And lastly, the whole business technology integration question, how much of the integration is going on between the ears of your frontline people? They're already got a customer's voice there. They're looking to meet their needs, understand, show empathy, do all the right things, control the call. If at the same time in front of them they're having to integrate 5 different systems through 17 windows, then that's hard. So these technology-enabled processes. Sorry, the system seems to be going quite slow today. I challenge you to go and ask your frontline people how many times have they had to say that. And if it's the case, take a wander upstairs to the IT department, tell them you've got a dozen PCs, right, that you'd like to swap for the ones that their developers are using, and see how the conversation goes. Because often that's what it is. You're telling Charlies you don't have the technology that's right for you. If you're having conversations with vendors about cloud services and so on, yes, cloud services are perfectly fine. But the key thing is, where is the cloud? Which country is it over? And what's the delay? What's the latency in actually running services there? You don't want to see a PowerPoint presentation. You want to actually have a play using a live system and not something that's been jacked up for the purposes of showing you. And the last one here is around number of windows open. So many places we go, we see so many windows. And what's starting to scare me is the number of sites I walk into that don't have just 2 monitors, they've got 3. The only person that might need that's your workforce planner. But quite frankly, 3 is just way too many. So a few interesting things here. Perils of using caller ID for routing. I've seen some nasty cases here where it wasn't actually the customer that held the phone, and some things happened which didn't ought to have. So is it really the customer? You need some verification methods which make sure that is the person you think you're talking to is the one that's there. The second one is your lovely IT department. You decide you're going to actually move to running 7 days for a particular campaign, and then the IT guys say, "Oh, look, sorry, we didn't know you were going to be there. Didn't you know we always take the systems down on Sunday nights?" The last one is the bane of life at times for contact center managers, and that is, we came in this morning, we didn't know anything was changing, but things don't work anymore, or they don't work the same way. And one of the important things is that as a contact center manager, you've got a control log, and IT have to put things in there telling you when they're changing stuff. So if they're changing queues, they're changing anything which involves your ecosystem. All right, moving on to the next finger in terms of the levers, accountabilities and KPIs. Hey, it's like a good cocktail. There's good ones and there's not so good ones. And the important thing is with your KPIs, you need to support the customer experience intent. So what do you want to happen to your customers? And so much of this in terms of KPIs is being in the right place at the right time. So we've got some status for team leaders. It's around performance, coaching, and customer service agents. Sensible AHT, you see you've got sensible in quotes there. We don't think you can lock it down. We think there needs to be a range. Too short, not good service. Too long, not good service. Somewhere in the middle, and you'll see how we kind of chart that later on. Adherence to schedule, being in the right place at the right time, and call quality. Those are the 3 things which are really important. And there's some there for your leadership team, which are around service level and so on. Not too many KPIs and easy to track. This is the key. We've seen organizations where frontline agents have got up to 10, 15 KPIs they're being measured on. It's just impossible for them to actually serve all masters with this. So the important thing, it's the old story here of what gets measured gets done. You need to beware what you wish for, though, and we'll see a bit of this a bit later on, because it's a question of can people actually make things happen when you didn't want them to. Schedule adherence, teamwork conversation. If agents are missing an action from the queue, is it them or is it the team leaders who have stolen them away? And I have to say that it's a 50-50 call at times. And while we're on the team leader topic, and these people are the time poor people in your world, they just always are. But if they speak of feedback and coaching as the same thing, then you've got some work to do in terms of coaching them about what it is. So here's a story or two in this world of KPIs and queue management. We're at a site where my colleague Roz was sitting with a frontline person, and all of a sudden up pops on the screen of Sally, the CSR, this message which said, you are currently 15% over the AHT target for the day. You will need to improve your performance. So Roz says, well, what on earth is that? Sarah, what's going on? Oh, no, that's okay, that's okay. That's just how it works around here. Okay, so what are you going to do now, says Roz. And Sarah says, oh, look, it's easy. I'll just shorten the calls for the rest of the day. I'll get my target. Won't be a problem. Similar situation in terms of after-call work. Another site we were on where I was talking to an agent and I said, look, how do you get this ACW target, after-call work? Oh, that's no problem. I just put the caller on hold and I do my after-call work and I tell them that they're going on hold while I go check something. But actually, I'm doing after-call work. So hold is my friend. And the last point here is around agents being measured on service level. It's not their thing. They can't influence it, only about being there at the right time. But if there aren't enough staff rostered on, or their other agents are off late to morning tea because they all like to go together, then service level is going to slip. It's got nothing to do with the agent. They cannot solve that problem, so it's just not fair. Moving on to quality and performance. So here we've got the world of where customer experience actually comes to the fore. And things we like to see here, some good quality evaluation profiles and protocols about how it's done. Trended results is what goes here. So we look at trended results around a selection of random calls, emails, web chats, whatever it might be, to see how I went across the month if I'm a frontline agent. In our view, team leaders must do some evaluation and provide all of the feedback. After all, it's their team. So therefore, as an agent, wouldn't you expect to get feedback, coaching, and those sorts of things from your team leader? A couple of other things around listening to call recordings. Honestly, the only time we think it's worth a team leader sitting down and listening to recordings with an agent is for what we call a mistreat. This is where maybe the agent's been abusive or something towards the caller. What's better, in our experience, is to build a reference library of good calls and sit down with your agent in the feedback session and say, hey, look, one of the things in your coaching plan is going to be go and listen to 10 calls on that situation, and they're in the library, you'll find them under this, and away you go. It's just so much better value. The last point here about quality is that your quality program is a fantastic place to go look to highlight poor processes and processes that need re-engineering, because that way you kind of win twice. Yes, it's a big investment in team leader time, but at least you go there and you can see it and you can derive value from it. So, oh no, please not call-by-call feedback. One of the things we see so often is all of the feedback is on a call-by-call basis. You sit down, you listen to calls, and then you feedback one-on-one, call-by-call. It just isn't fair, because Jim's not going to have the same call tomorrow as he had yesterday at 3:15. And really, feedback's about what happened. What we really want to do is to identify the customer experience behavior trends and coach to close the skill gaps in a sustainable way. So feedback happens now. We have the feedback. Steve, you've got some issues here. Really the issues are looking at the trending is you're really good at the intro, you're really good at identifying what the issue might be, but you're utterly hopeless at knowing where to find where the solutions might be, and your closure in terms of agreeing what you should do and what the customer needs to do is just not up there. Now, you wouldn't use those words, but essentially then you sit down, you figure out a coaching plan. That might involve going, listening to some calls, sitting with someone you know is really good, and close those in a sustainable way, and then look at next month to see how it goes on a trended basis. The last point here is that from our perspective, agent self-evaluation and team leader call shadowing, really dubious value. I don't think they do a lot for you. For a start, if the team leader is call shadowing on a incognito basis so that the agent doesn't know, that's not hugely trusting. And secondly, if the team leader is there and the agent does know, then they're likely to be freaking out because they think, oh no, the master is listening to what I'm doing. So a few cringes here. We don't bother with quality evaluations for our top performers. Okay. So everyone stays the same forever? I don't think so. The second one is a bit of a scary one, and this is real. This is around feedback on quality evaluations. It gets emailed out. And I won't read it, but if you read what the email has in it below, the Hi Steve email, that's not exactly how you'd want it to go. All right, you're perfectly capable of passing that with high marks as long as you put in the effort. Oh dear. Reporting. Let's move on to the lovely topic of reporting. So the You Choose report generator can be a minefield. This is where you get huge numbers of variables and you can actually put them into the report you want. Now, Enghouse does this. I'm not saying that it's an issue. It's more you need to choose carefully and you need to understand the definitions because the Enghouse reporting is hugely flexible and enables you to see the things that you need to see. So important things to look at is, does your service calculation include abandoned calls? Because they need to be there because they're part of the customer experience. And the important other thing about reporting is that show me the things I can do something about and a part of my KPIs, because that way I'm far more likely to take them on board and to get on and do something about it. So when you're looking at reporting, you always start with the customer experience view in mind. So a few pitfalls in this game. Reporting on service level by interval is really important because if you think about it, customer experience shouldn't be an average for the day. A lot of sites use service level and look at the percentage for the day. And as you'll see in some of the charts a bit further on, poor experience at 9 in the morning is offset by great experience at 4 in the afternoon. These two average out and I look like I made my target for the day. You've got to look at customer experience across the day, interval by interval. Just the way it goes. Pictures beat tables every time, and I'll show you why shortly. So here's some delightful examples. We set our abandon ignore setting at 20 seconds, helps us meet service level. Well, yes, I guess it does, but what about those poor people in that 20 seconds who actually, they did mean to call you, it wasn't a wrong number. And apart from little Sally Ann falling off the swing, which you're bound to get some abandons like that, or the pot boiling over on the stove, that abandon ignore setting needs to be down around the kind of 3 to 5 max, 3 to 5 seconds. Second one here, report service level for each agent as one of their KPIs. Well, again, it's not something they can influence, so why would you go there? And the last one here, we've joined an industry-wide AHT benchmarking study. Well, really? Is your business the same as everybody else's? Are your handle times the same as other people's? Maybe if you're in industries like energy sector or financial sector, maybe so, but industry-wide average handle time benchmarking, as far as I'm concerned, is a waste of time. So here's an example of some reporting charts just to buzz through. So let's take four teams following targets. 160 to 200 seconds there is their sensible AHT range, quality 80 to 90, sales 1, 2, and 3. Here we have some doubles charts. Quite frankly, these would be cringe factor if you stuck them on the wall, but we see companies that do. We take that, we use the lovely reporting tool that's called Excel, and we produce a contact center view. We can see our 4 teams. We can see that our floors team is not hugely flash around here, okay, because their handle times are, some of them are way too short. Here's the envelope that we're looking to be in, so that's where we want, that's the sweet spot. So we've got these guys in the stairs team, yeah, okay, we've got quality scores that are up there, but handle times which are way too long. So this gives you a nice, neat, tidy way to do that. Let's have a look at some things which might have come out of your Enghouse platform. So, and a little bit of commentary along the way. So here we go. Service level, it's all over the place if you look at this particular site. So service level is the dotted line. All right, so we're in here. So this is it. It's up and down and all over the place in here. And then here it is sinking away down to the depths. So, and in the evening, in this area here, we can see it's pretty raw. Okay. If we look down here to see, so what's going on? What's driving this kind of strange behavior? Because something clearly is happening, which is giving us a bit of a problem. So look at this at the start. We've got all these people, all right, so scheduled. This is what the schedule looks like, this plot here. Okay, and here's all these people. What are they doing sitting here? No wonder we've got 100% service level, because we've got far more people than we asked for. Here we've got a bit of a hole, schedule adherence, it breaks. In other words, everybody's gone off to afternoon tea together. Same happens when we get into this. So they're all off a dinner break. Where are they all gone? Oh, actually, the pace might be too hot. We have overload. We're not sure about that. We need to have a look. So let's flick to the next page and look at occupancy. Here's the occupancy graph. Oh no, it's sitting up in almost 100%. In other words, I'm getting call after call after call. I'm really struggling. So that's in the burnout zone. And what we've got there, if we come down to here, the staff are under pressure and they're probably running away. Because what people do is they'll log off, they'll answer calls and then hang them up. In other words, they'll go into what we call a mental health break. Some other interesting things here. Here's shrinkage, staff shrinkage, target of 20%. There's no way on earth you can get in there. So as a consequence, we're seeing shrinkage is sitting much higher than that because this is their target across the line. So these kinds of pictures are really useful. Here's a major mismatch of roster to forecast need. So this is what the roster is showing clearly, and this is what the forecast here we had to have. So we've got mismatches across the line. So let's move on now into some kind of wrap-up points for you. Firstly, 5 value-based operating principles. First of these, surprise, surprise, is consistency. Process, protocols, practices, quality evaluation, all these things need consistency across the channels and so on. Teamwork's important, and as you saw earlier, teamwork's manifest in many ways. It can be team leaders taking agents off queue. It can be agents staying too long at morning and afternoon teas. Third one of these, sensible handle time and quality. Put those together because you need them to be really a pigeon pair. They've got to be together. Fourth one of these is trended results. Call by call feedback doesn't do the business because no call is ever the same. And the thing that binds these together is actually trust. So that's the glue. The trust that your people will do the right thing. Remember I talked about average handle time. If you pin that down, you pin after call work down, it says you don't trust your people to do the right thing. You use your evaluation process to sort that out if the handle times are too short by looking in that envelope that we had in the picture further back. So coming onto the roadmap then to a sustainable customer experience centre, and I think this is where things are going. It will be a customer experience centre. So the first piece is around discovery, and this is laying the foundations. So first thing you need to do is get a bit of a picture of your world. If you're your contact centre just taking over from in a new site, get a sense of what's there, get some priorities sorted out on things you see, deliver some early wins so you've got sustainability. The next step on the roadmap, look at service design. So how does that design look? How does it work? Unified process design, routing, CRM system setup, all that needs to bind together very, very tightly and closely. And thirdly is service standards and realistic service level agreements. So don't sign up for things you can't deliver. Third piece here is around the hard skills. So this is KPIs, workforce planning, customer experience, quality management, and role-based performance reporting. And lastly, soft skills. How do you use those things that we have in the hard skills to actually use the business reporting and get good team leadership going? Bots and blended service. Tomorrow is now. So I guess we're seeing a few things starting to emerge here, and it's around routing of calls or callers or customer interactions based on the personal information of the person that's actually making contact with us. And the aim here is to get them routed to the last agent if they're available. The initial query contact often will be with a bot. That might be a web chat bot, or it might be a call bot, until handoff to an agent. So you're looking to find out the best information, and what that means is that your agents become the value-added problem solvers. Their life becomes more interesting, more challenging, and they'll be far more satisfied and want to hang about if that's the case. Suggestion is all first contact, including social media, will be handled in your centre. Yes, marketing will be finally forced to give up social media and hand it to where it needs to be, because your people are going to be there. They have structured processes. They have consistency about how things are done. Amazon View, customers are invited guests. So really, customer experience of tomorrow is about proactive and personalised. And I guess, yes, the customers are looking for instant gratification. Right, so in terms of wrapping up, back to our fingertip levers, we've got our 5 factors that we look in terms of seeing things. And I guess from your perspective there as a contact centre manager, it's around going, look, you don't need to see this whole staircase to take the first step. So you need to make a start. Use your team to help you build some of these things based on having some discovery around these 5 factors, which you can count on the fingers of one hand. So this is you in the middle. Yes, you want them hanging on to that arrow. All right, and taking you forward. And really, this is you at the end of the road, or partway down the road, having looked at these 5 factors and having taken some things on board to get some things happening. So that pretty much brings us to the end for any questions and feedback. So I'll hand back to Chris at this point.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was really good, awesome insights there. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we'll be taking questions. So if you could please put in questions you have in the chat pane in the GoToWebinar interface on the right-hand side of your page. Now, we have had a couple of questions come through during the presentation, so we'll start with those. Now, the first question is, what sort of staff shrinkage percentage would you expect, and how do you sell that to senior management? Looks like you might be on mute there, Steve.
I was muted. Let's just start that again. Apologies for that. So I guess where would I start? Well, I'd be expecting 35 to 40%. And some of you might go, gosh, that's an awful lot of extras. But the reality is you typically would estimate your staff initially on just enough to handle calls, emails, web chats, whatever it might be. So really there's a need for quite a few more to handle the other stuff that goes on. So when you're talking to the senior management upstairs, look, the reality is that leave and sick leave under the employment contracts will probably cost you 15% for a start. Morning and afternoon teas, annual training, 11%. So that's where it, 26. And then by the time you add a bit of coaching and off-cue time and meetings and training and all those good things, you're going to be heading into that 35 kind of % bracket. So that's it. But really the key thing is you ask the CFO whether in fact his staff are allowed leave, are they allowed to have morning and afternoon teas, and don't they actually have to have some annual training to keep their compliance up. Chris.
Great, thanks, Steve. Now, second question. Regarding web chat, should you forecast for additional heads, or can you manage this with existing staff?
I think probably you are going to need some extra heads even at the startup point, because probably initially people handling web chat want to just do a bit of that. Maybe they're doing emails as well. If you go back to the slide further back, which talks about what do you put together, then the written stuff should go with the web chat people. You probably will need some extras initially while they get used to it. Maybe you need some help in terms of the phone calls and the initial parts. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily assume that you can just simply add it all in, depending on, of course, how occupied you are. So have a look at the occupancy figures. If there's some space in the occupancy across your day, some organisations we've worked with only run web chat in the evening, so they run it when they know they've got staff available for that. Chris.
Okay, next question. How do you overcome agent complaints that it's not fair because some team leaders are easy markers of quality evaluations and others are really hard?
Yes. Well, I guess one of the traps that a lot of organisations get into is that they have an evaluation profile, but the evaluation profile has things like 1 to 5 ratings for particular things that they're looking for on that profile. And the problem with that is that is incredibly subjective in terms of people scoring. So we find the best way is you strongly move to yes, no, not applicable. So either you did it or you don't, or else it's not applicable in this case. And then that simplifies matters. Plus, you organise a team leader calibration program, and you basically send out a call, an email, and a web chat each month for evaluation, and then they would come together to compare notes and to get things lined up. So it's pretty much the same. Yeah, it takes time and effort to get that right, but it's really worth it because you don't want people going, I don't want to be in Sally's team, I want to be in Jim's team because Jim's an easy marker. Chris?
What are the most important features to look for if you're looking to buy a workforce planning tool?
Workforce planning tools. They're an interesting beast because, as I said earlier, this is a black art. I guess the important things for me is probably 3 things I'd think about top of mind, and that would be you need to be able to take out the abnormal days from forecasts. So if you know you had a rubbish day because the power went off or something happened or there were great floods around the place and half your staff were away, you want to be able to delete that from the forecast process. Second thing is you need to be able to see agent schedule adherence and actual shrinkage reporting. So those are important things which should be part of the reporting, and often they're not. Some of the web services don't actually provide you with schedule adherence, and that's a big hole as far as I'm concerned for managing queues. And the third thing is you really need to have what-if scenario staff forecast and roster tool so that you can actually have a play on what happens if we run that TV campaign and the average handle time doubles in length. And you need to be able to have that so you can actually do it without breaking the live roster. It's a bit like having a sandpit. You can go play in the sandpit without breaking the world. And I guess while we're on the topic of that, we have been having some conversations about possibly running some discovery workshops with KPIs ANZ here in New Zealand in terms of workforce planning, sort of fun kind of challenges that people are having and what you might do about them. Chris?
Well, thank you everyone for your questions. That's all the questions I received for today. So that concludes today's webinar.